Let's talk about selecting and deselecting objects, how to keep our scene organized using what's called the outliner, grouping techniques, and viewport shading to see how we visualize what's in our viewport. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go up to Create and just grab a polygon primitive. Just a sphere is fine. And so we see that the sphere is now placed in the origin. If you hit the letter F on your keyboard, this will basically focus whatever object you have selected with the camera. So if you have, for example, these two and you're here, these two spheres, and you have both of these selected and you hit F, then it's going to basically split the difference between the two. So it's one way to bring whatever object you have selected into focus. It's just the letter F, and that's a built-in Maya hotkey. So we have this polygon sphere here, and how do we select it and deselect it when we have multiple objects? I'm just going to place these three here for just the general purpose. So to select an object, you can click on it, and you can shift click another object and another one. This will add to the selection. However, if you're doing a crossing window, so I'm going to make another one of these here. If you're doing a crossing window and you select anything that you touch from left to right will be selected the same as it will going right to left. So you don't have to actually go over the entire object to select it. To deselect an object, you hold the control key and you click on it, and that will deselect. It will remove it from the current selection. So if we have these three selected and we want to add to the selection by using a crossing window to add this one, if we hold shift, remember shift is to add the selection, if we hold shift and drag over it but go over one that's already selected, it's going to deselect the one that you touch and add the one that you were crossing the window to that selection. Meaning, I'm going to undo that. So, you know, if you do this, you're going to deselect that object and add the other one to the selection. Doesn't matter if you go over the whole thing or not. So to do that with a crossing window, you have to hold Control and Shift and drag over the object, or just, you know, drag over any part of the object. And it doesn't matter if you touch any of the other ones. Same thing. That will be fine. So that's how you add to the selection by using a crossing window. And that will come into effect when you have a lot of different objects and you're selecting a lot of them and you have to, you know, use a dragging window to select them instead of dragging over and deselecting them. If you hold Control and Shift, you will add to that selection that way. Okay, so let me just delete these. And I'm going to hit F to focus in on this. So what are our viewport shading options for our geometry? So built in by default is there are three hotkeys that we'll use constantly, and it's 4, 5, and 6. So 4 is the wireframe mode for the geometry, 5 is shaded, and 6 is textured. Now we don't have any textures and we haven't UV mapped anything, so it's not going to be any different than 5 right now. But 4, 5, and 6 we're going to use constantly. So 4 wireframe, 5 shaded, and 6 for texture. But what if you want to see, you notice when you click this, you click the polygon sphere, you see the faces, you see the edges. What if we wanted to see that when it's not selected? Then you would need to go up to View, and you can go, Shading, Wireframe Unshaded. Or you can go under the menu bar, there's this, lot from the left, the blue with the white lines around it. You can click that on and off, and that will toggle between the two. And it's split up in about 3 categories here. You can see these are camera bookmarks, and you can set your camera here. These are for the render gates and resolution gates, and then this is for your shading properties, your viewport properties for the polygon object, I mean. So here you can go between these. Same thing as hitting, this is the same thing as hitting 4. this is the same thing as hitting 4, this is the same thing as hitting 5, and this will toggle your wireframe unshaded, and then the one after that is the texture, which is 6. So how do we show or hide objects? And let me go ahead and just turn on the wireframe unshaded. So to hide an object, we can do Control H. That's a default Maya hotkey, and you'll use this one a lot as well. So once again, Control H hides it. You can also go up to Display, Hide, and Hide Selection. To show it, you can go back up to Display and go Show, and then do Last Hidden. That will show the last hidden object. Or you can, when you do Control H to hide it, instead of going up to the display, you can do Control Shift H, and that will show the last selection that was hidden. So I prefer using the hotkeys as to going up every time and going show, hide, etc., because that's pretty time consuming if you have a lot of different objects here. So let me just add a couple of these here, and don't worry about the duplicating aspect. We'll talk about that later. So I'm gonna have these 3 spheres here, and so if I hide the first one and I hide the second one by using Control H, if I do Control Shift H now, it will only show the last one hidden, but not the one that was hidden before that. So to do that, you'd have to go up to Display, Show, and then All will show all the ones that are hidden. So if I take these 2, and I do Control H, and I go up to Display, down to Show, and across to All, it will show all the ones that were hidden, regardless of the order they were hidden in. So let's make a hotkey for Show All, because that's one that I use a lot, and I think it's important. And let's just go ahead and take this opportunity to show you how to make a hotkey, even though we kind of went over it pretty quickly. But let's go up to Window, Settings and Preferences, and then Hotkey Editor. And so let's just open this. And so we know that we want to make a hotkey for the Show All. So the Show All is under the Display category. So we go across on the left to Display, and we scroll down to Show All. And you go in, you type the key A, and you assign it, which mine's already done, and you hit Save. Hit OK, close. Go up to File, Save Preferences, and we're good to go. So now, if we take these 2, and I do Control H, and I just tap the A key, it's going to now show all. So let's go ahead and review one more time. So Control H is to hide. You can keep hiding these. To show the last hidden is Control Shift H. And if you want to show all, then you do the letter A on your keyboard. But what if you want to invert the selection? So say that I want to, okay, so I have this sphere selected, and I want to isolate this sphere and hide everything that's unselected. You can do that by doing Alt and H. So Alt and H will hide everything that's unselected if you have the object selected. And I'll do A to show everything again. And let me go ahead and just make 2 more of these. And I'm duplicating by doing Control D. So if you're following along and you want to do that, we'll deal with that later. But Control D will duplicate these. So I have these 2 selected, and I do Alt H. Now we've isolated that. If I want to show, but if you do the Control Shift H, it will show all the other ones, because technically that was the last thing that was hidden. It was all the objects as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So once again, Control H to hide, Control Shift H to show the last hidden, Alt H to hide, to isolate the selection, and then A to show all. So that's something we're going to use a lot, and it makes it pretty easy to kind of work around. Let's look at the outliner and talk a bit about what was happening while we were selecting and unselecting, hiding these objects. So let's open the outliner by going up to Window, down to Outliner, and it'll pop up like this. And so the outliner is where you can see everything that's in your scene. You can see your cameras here, your perspective, top, front, side. And here you see all of your polyspheres, which are the ones we created and duplicated. So we have 1 through 5 here. And if you go to the left, you see a little drop down, and that just shows you the shape node, which you can control by display and whether you want or don't want to see the shape node. So when we were selecting these, right, say we want to select from 2 to 4, and we hide those by Control H, then you notice they're not gone. They're still in the scene. They're just hidden. And if you look at your outliner, you can see that they're grayed out. 2 through 4 are grayed out. When you hit A, then they come back. It's a great way to organize the scene and keep your groups and things in order. Know what's hidden, what's not hidden when you're not using the layers. So with this, we'll talk about grouping now. And with grouping, basically it's ways to not layer. It's different than putting things in a layer. You can basically select these guys. If you select them and do Control G, then you notice that creates a group. And within that group, you see that there's 3 objects that are embedded within. And so from a hierarchy perspective, it goes from the bottom up. So meaning if you select an object that's in a group and you press the up key, then it jumps to the next level of the hierarchy and shows you, selects all the objects in the group. And you can rename this group. If you double click it, you can say, sphere group. If I could type, that would help. Sphere group. And so now if we click that, you can see that it selects all of the objects in that group. And they actually have their own transforms different than each one of the individual objects. You can see that it's actually changed. You can see in your translate X, it's already been, that was moved over 3.099 units when I moved it over when I duplicated. But if I select the group has its own set of transforms that are independent of each one of the spheres. To add an object to a group, instead of selecting the group and selecting the next object and doing Control G again, you could do that, but I really recommend you don't. That's something that can get very messy later on, because now you have groups within groups, you have nested groups, and that's not something that's very good to do. So if you want to undo that, you can either undo or go up to Edit, and then Ungroup, and that will ungroup what you just did. So if you want to add the polysphere 4 to the sphere group, you can middle mouse button click and drag it into that group, like so. And now when you hit the drop down, you can see that polysphere 4 is now part of the sphere group. And so this is a nice way to keep this organized, and you can select a group and move it as a group instead of individually. And I'm going to add this one to this group as well. The same thing, if you want to take one out of the group, you can middle mouse button and drag it all the way down, and it will remove it from that group, as you can see now here. And we'll get into the outliner a bit more in depth as we continue moving along. But for now, this should be able to get us going. And I have a hotkey set for the outliner, which I would recommend doing as well. I have it set for O, but you can go up to Window and Outliner, or set whatever hotkey you would like. One other thing I just noticed on the channel box, you guys probably do not have your yours would say translate X, Y, Z. I have changed mine, and that's under Edit, Channel Names, and then mine is set to short. But if you set it to long, then you notice that it actually writes it out. If you go back to Edit, Channel Names, Nice, then it will change that once more. So now we're all back on the same page with that. So that wraps it up for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to look at transforms and freezing and modifying them in a little bit more in depth with the channel box.